Because it's such a popular style, most people know, or think they know, the origins of the IPA. Hey, this is Ryan from Beer by the Numbers, and today we're diving into the true history and evolution of the IPA. So the popular origin story of the IPA goes something like this. Back in the late 1700s and early 1800s, England held a large colonial presence in India. The soldiers, sailors, and civilians had a huge appetite for beer. Trouble was, the voyage to India was long, and by the time the ships made it there, the traditional beers had spoiled. Even when they didn't, the dark porters that were popular at the time in London weren't quite the ticket in the hot climate of India. George Hodgson of the Bow Brewery in London was the first person to come up with a solution to this problem. He began brewing a lighter style of beer known as pale ale. Hodgson realized that the high alcohol and hop levels would prevent spoilage on the long journey. His process succeeded, and for about 50 years he held a virtual monopoly in the Indian market. So what exactly is wrong with this story? Well, just like any story that gives all the credit to one person, it's never that simple. It's certainly true that British exporters were experiencing problems with beer making the journey to India. Much of the beer that arrived in India was not fit to drink, and there were many accounts of beer being dumped into the sea. There was just no way to prevent the hardships a cask would experience while at sea. When they first departed England, the North Atlantic kept the beer at a perfect cellar temperature between 50 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. But that didn't last as the ships neared the equator to pass around Africa, where the warm seas rocked the casks to a foamy froth and were a balmy 80 degrees. Then the beer would be chilled again going around the Horn of Africa before heating up again upon arrival to the colony. Now, through decades of trial and error, a few breweries finally found a way to mitigate some spoilage and add a lot of bacteria-killing hops. This was certainly no guarantee, but it did make beer more likely to survive the journey. So much so that by 1760, all brewers were being advised that a large helping of hops was an absolute necessity. This bit of advice about hops was being widely circulated some 25 to 30 years prior to Hodgson's pale ales. In the meantime, India was developing a great taste for the same porters and stouts that were popular in London, although these were a bit hoppier. And although Bow Breweries wasn't the first hoppy pale ale to make it to India, it was certainly the most popular. But in reality, even though the beer and hoppy pale ales became quite popular in India, it's surprising to learn that the Indian market was never more than a blip in the world of beer at the time. At its height, India was only receiving 10,000 barrels a year. That was just 1/6 the amount received by North America, and just 1/10 of the largest single brewery in England, which alone churned out 100,000 barrels. Now, based on the pretty small export market to India, you'd think the IPA would have ended up a footnote in brewing history. But fortunately for hopheads everywhere, a new rail line between Burton and London linked the pale ale breweries with the huge London market. Soon, pale ales advertised as ready for India began being advertised as a popular special occasion beer. One brewery even touted IPAs as the beer of the gentry. It was a commercial hit, and this is when the style was born. IPAs never sold that well in India, but they became a standard bearer in the English market. As Indian pale ales have evolved, the family tree has split into two distinct categories: British and American IPAs. British IPAs are a modest beer, around 5% alcohol and only moderate hopping. American IPAs are stronger, generally between 6 and 7% alcohol, and showcase intense hop aromas and flavors. In the 19th century, IPAs didn't change much. It wasn't till the 20th century that world events forced a change to the style in England. To save on grain during World War I, all British beers were required to be brewed at a lower strength, causing a permanent change to IPAs. By the 1940s, the style was about the same as a pale ale, and in many breweries, the IPA was less alcoholic than their signature pale ale. In America, Prohibition nearly killed all ale production, and certainly killed the popularity of the IPA in the US. But the IPA found new life in the 1990s on the American West Coast. Craft brewers discovered the awesome hop growing climate and began using more and more hops, reviving the all-but-dead style. Soon, West Coast IPAs began pushing the envelope of what hoppy beer could be. And today, brewers in the northeast of the US are introducing another evolution to the style with the Northeast IPA. These beers are characterized by their hazy color and strong fruit flavors to pair with all that hoppy goodness. The humble IPA began as an export to a colony. It circled the globe. It spread from England to North America. It nearly died as a style and then became the symbol of the craft beer renaissance, all while bearing the name of a country where it was never actually brewed.